temporal progression of his disabled right wrist and hand was dispiriting, the appendages failing to respond after several months of consecrated effort. Gary receiving a telephone call from guitarist Jerry Connell, who was working with Gary at the Holiday Inn West Pirates Cove Club when his debilitating altercation occurred. Jerry advocating, not a need for a piano player, but a bass player, knowing Gary played keyboard bass with his left hand on his Fender Rhodes piano. Offering a 5-night-per-week engagement at the Uptown Club on North Walker. An overwhelming affirmative reply reconciled the pianist's spirit, a redundancy to re-establish his profession. The musician once again finding a contentment evolving from his left-hand bass benefaction, and as the weeks progressed a sense of awakening began in his dormant hand, the numbness beginning to decline. With his right hand poised over the keyboard each night, receiving its instructional command to perform, a firmness returned, at first to a finger, then followed by two. Realizing by the grace of God and his consciousness of mind, it continued to send a musical message to the remaining fingers. The wrist brace still remained, but the dexterity of the fingers were commencing to be more functional, and with this he could see the light at the end of the tunnel. It was during a night's performance, a welcome sight entered the Uptown Club. Gary haven't seen or talked to Jan Lahan for over a year. Jan accompanied with a friend introduced as Mickey Rogers. The pianist visiting with the couple, recalling events of the past, and from the conversation it was apparent Jan and Mickey were in a relationship and that Mickey's occupation was speculative in nature. A continuing return of dexterity, Gary appreciative of Jerry Connell's confidence in a one-handed pianist, but like other Oklahoma City clubs, the Uptown was in the scrutiny for a diminutive accordance. Business was slow, the band being furloughed to playing only weekends. Gary deciding to call his Pirates Cove drummer Eddie Ferguson and wife Debbie Swisher, whom he had left stranded at the Cove when he experienced the loss of his hand. The pianist asking if they would be interested in getting back together if he could book them, the two agreeing. Gary's first recourse was a visit to Herb Carpenter at the Pirates Cove, finding and not surprised that he was satisfied with pianist Jim Mullins, but suggesting to Gary that he visit with Mitch, a subcontractor that participated in the construction of the Holiday Inn West, who had recently retained the club's franchise at the Holiday Inn in Norman. Gary, well acquainted with Mitch, visiting with him in Norman, offering to put together the same group that filled the Pirates Cove to capacity. Without hesitation Mitch agreeing. The Cove component was reunited with their Norman engagement. It was a stormy night, tornado warnings having been issued, and the sirens serving notice as Gary proceeded down Interstate 35 toward Norman. The buffeting winds accosting the musician. The driver having difficulty seeing on the outreach of Moore, where Eddie and Debbie's trailer park resided. The musician became concerned. The storm intensified, the wind and rain pelting with a roar. Gary thankful when the experience slackened. Upon arrival at the Holiday Inn, discovering a message from Jerry, logging his unavailability because of the storm. The pianist awaiting the arrival of Deb and Eddie, but as time waned his concern blossomed, finally placing a phone call to their trailer park residence, discovering a continuous busy signal. A determination for not answering the call coming from the television, a weather responder reporting a tornado having briefly touched down crossing Interstate 35 and more causing damage to a trailer park. Gary hesitant at first, but then deciding to provide the storm-captive audience with a piano concurrence, on the bandstand giving an explanation for the solitary performance, mentioning he would be happy to play request. It was later during that stormy night, the pianist recognized the person attesting the bar. a renowned televised entertainer from a prestigious network program of the era, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. The presidential candidate of humor, Pat Paulson, was firmly planted on a bar stool. Gary introducing himself to the celebrated personality, finding Pat having just concluded an appearance at the University of Oklahoma, and was still adhered in Norman because of the Storm's ineptitude with his airline reservation. Gary attempting to persuade the television personality to accord a microphone and join him on stage, but his declination was absorbed in a glass of scotch. Deliberating whether to announce Pat's presence, a chance the recognition might spur him to give a sample of his humor, but the pianist having second thoughts, deciding Pat having already put in a day's work. The Norman, Oklahoma night coming to a conclusion, the Storms having moved on, the musician tempted to stop at Deb and Eddie's trailer park on his way home, but reasoned the situation didn't need another onlooker. A morning call from the two saying the tempest played havoc with their trailer, moving it on the cement block foundation, but the trailer and contents were only jostled and the two were safe. The pianist concluding it was another night to remember.